Most of the time when I'm working in Dreamweaver, I keep the display set to split view so that I can see what's happening behind the scenes. And that can be helpful when you do something like add a return at the end of this headline and then type something like HTML is not so bad. And after you type something like that, you might think, wait a minute, how come that doesn't have the same formatting as my H1? Or maybe it does have the same formatting as the H1 and I didn't want it to. Well, there are a lot of ways you can fix that. You can highlight this and format it with H1. I've closed my property inspector at the bottom so that I had more work room, but let's bring it back up now. So I could format this H1. And you can see now Dreamweaver's put an H1 around each of those elements. But then I might take a word out of the middle and I might put it down here. And I might say, wow, that didn't keep its formatting. How come? Well, Dreamweaver tries to guess when you want things to keep the formatting when you copy and paste them and when you don't. So if you take a single word out of the middle of a headline like that and put it in an area that's formatted with just a paragraph tag, Dreamweaver assumes you didn't want to preserve the code. But if I highlight this entire headline, and I put that down here, I might have actually intended to keep the H1 that time, and Dreamweaver couldn't tell the difference. So you have a couple of choices. You can simply add a return there, put your H1 tag back, or if I undo this, I could have selected this, and then, paying attention to the code, realized that Dreamweaver didn't select the H1, and in the code, I could select all of that, put my cursor down where I want it to appear, and when I paste it and refresh, Dreamweaver preserves that code. So now you can see, if you're looking at split view, you can better see what you're selecting and what you're not selecting, especially when you're using copy and paste. There is one other trick for doing this. Let me get rid of my properties inspector again, or at least diminish it a little bit there. If I bring this up so I can see the tag selector, if I wanted to select this headline, and I click and drag to select all of this, Dreamweaver hasn't selected the H1. But if I want to make sure it has, and I don't want to look at the code, I can select it here, and notice what happens. When you click on the tag itself in the tag selector, then you're telling Dreamweaver that you want the tag as well as the content. And it's the same effect as selecting it in the code. The one other thing to keep in mind here is if you copy text out of the code view, you need to paste it back into the code view area. If you copy it here in design view using the tag selector, then you want to paste it back into design view. Otherwise, you can get rather strange effects, like watch this. If I select just this top headline in the HTML code, and I copy it, and then I scroll down to the bottom of my document and I paste it into design view, look what happens in the code and look what happens in design view. I got my H1 tags in design view. That's not what I intended. In the code, Dreamweaver is trying to give me that special character for my brackets, and I'm not getting the H1 formatting I wanted. So completely not my intention, right? So the simple solution there is copy and paste from code view to code view, from design view to design view, not from one to the other. Oh, let's get rid of that. And yes, most of the time, when you're working in Dreamweaver, you can stay in design view. But once in a while, if something like that happens and you can't figure out why, switch over to split view and you may find out that there's a tag you didn't intend that's getting pasted around some of your content. And you can sometimes more easily fix it by just going into the code and fixing the tag than you can by trying to completely reformat it in design view. What you just saw there was Dreamweaver keeping an H1 tag after I deleted the content. And then when I used the backspace, it reformatted that paragraph in the H1 style. But simply replacing the P tags let me put it back the way I wanted. There are so many ways that what's happening in the code can differ from what you're trying to do in design view. And that's why I think it's so important to at least have a basic understanding of HTML so that you can troubleshoot when things go wrong and appreciate Dreamweaver and save you from having to write all those tags yourself the rest of the time.